Quiet, quiet, quiet.
Hi, I'm Brandon Suzuki. My topic was the CIA's involvement in the assassination of JFK. So, what actually happened on that day? So, November 22nd, 1963, JFK was in the Dallas parade in a motorcade, basically campaigning for his re-election. He already gave a speech that morning and was going to give another speech. I forgot where it was. But basically around 11 a.m., he was shot in a car with the Texas governor, John Connally. The official story says that he was shot 3 times, with the first bullet missing, hitting a bystander. The second bullet is known as the magic bullet. I'll get to that later. And the third bullet is the one that actually shot him in the head and killed JFK. So there were actually two committees set up to figure out what happened, because the assassination of a president is kind of a big deal. So the first one was the Warren Commission in the 60s, where they established that there was a single shooter theory, and Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. 3 shots were fired because they found 3 bullet casings at the location which Lee Harvey Oswald was found. And funny little thing about this, the Warren Commission was almost entirely made up of guys either in the CIA or ex-CIA, because they were fired by JFK. But yeah, they basically established that Oswald just kind of acted spontaneously, just basically almost for fun, because psychologically he was known to be rash and spontaneous by people around him. He was kind of antisocial, and he had a history of being a communist sympathizer. Like, he tried to renounce his U.S. citizenship and get citizenship in the USSR, but they actually denied him. And then 2 months before he actually shot JFK, he went to, I think it was Mexico, to try and get a Cuban citizenship to replace his U.S. one. And then, about 10 years later, they had the House Select Committee on Assassinations. This one was made for both JFK and the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. And this one was a little more thorough because it included the entire House. But one of the key things that they found was that the Warren Commission actually falsified a lot of documents. Like, they either modified them or just destroyed them or just completely ignored some of it. And right in this investigation, they found a lot of documents that were just supposedly lost for about 13 years that actually went against what the Warren Commission found. And the House Select Committee on Assassinations actually found potential evidence for a potential 4th bullet, and the CIA also destroyed documents. But they didn't actually bother to investigate it thoroughly and just kind of stopped at, that's kind of weird. Something happened there, but I don't know, leave it later. And it's kind of weird that, a government organization would just leave something as important as a presidential assassination as just an open-ended thing of just, hey, let's figure that out later. So, I know it's kind of out of order, but it makes sense, trust me. So, for the context of this, and why the CIA might even want to kill JFK. So, the CIA in the 60s, 70s, 50s, that whole time period, they just hated the communists. They wanted to kill them in basically any way possible. And JFK was kind of known for being soft on communists because he was willing to negotiate with them with the Cuban Missile Crisis and then the Soviet arms treaties. And then also there was the Bay of Pigs invasion, which made JFK kind of hate the CIA a little more, because the Bay of Pigs invasion was such a failure because, one, the CIA was relying on the general populace of Cuba to rise up against Castro, but they kind of didn't do that. So then the CIA started asking JFK for air support, like bombing runs, during the invasion. But JFK was like, no, you told me you didn't need that, so I'm not going to give it to you. So the CIA was blaming JFK, but then JFK was mad at the CIA because he thought that the CIA made him approve and sign off on a plan that was already going to fail, just to kind of screw with him. So as a result of that, he actually fired the director of the CIA, Allen Dulles. And really funny thing about that guy, he was appointed to the Warren Commission by Lyndon B. Johnson. The commission that's found that guy was shot 3 times and not a 4th. And then after that, the CIA, JFK also threatened to cut the budget of the CIA by 20%, which didn't happen because he died. And there's another small thing in there where the Secret Service might have been involved in the assassination of JFK. because at the time, the Secret Service was actually under the jurisdiction of the Treasury, the U.S. Treasury. I'm not 100% sure why that is, but they were. And part of his things, he wanted to cut the budget of the CIA, but also wanted to cut the budget of the Treasury. So the Secret Service, which is under the Treasury, didn't particularly like him. So to go back to Cold War tensions, so you have Cuba, Vietnam, Korea. The wars aren't going great. A lot of Cold War tension. It's like the height of the Cold War. The U.S. needs to stay one country. So the FBI, there's an FBI document that literally says, hey, whatever conclusion we come to from the Warren Commission, it needs to have three things. It needs to be simple enough for the everyday American to understand. It needs to satisfy the American public. And it needs to only have one shooter so that there can only be like all assassins who are accounted for, and we don't have just a gunman who shot the president and we have no idea where he is, because that would look really bad for the government records. Again, a little bit out of order, but this is important to the overall story of it. So the actual shooter, Lee Harvey Oswald, was shot by nightclub owner Jack Ruby during basically he's being moved from one prison to another to be transported. That's the word. I blanked. Yes, that. Basically, he was being moved, and then this guy Jack Ruby comes up and shoots him on live television. And his shooting is important because it basically says, hey, this guy, he's no longer allowed to talk. So he can't talk about his own side of like why he shot or if he even did shoot it. Because in the initial arrest, he starts screaming, I'm a patsy. And patsy is an old slang word for basically, I'm being thrown under the bus. So, there's that. And then, so Jack Ruby also supposedly had mafia ties because his family debts were supposedly paid off by the mafia. But you know who else has a large shady stockpile of cash? Starts with a little CIA. So yeah, so it's basically a whole thing where Jack Ruby was a CIA plant that was basically hired, got all his debts paid off, family debts paid off, whatever, to shoot Oswald so that Oswald is not able to present his side of the story and potentially reveal information that would conflict the CIA narrative. And since there's not really any conflicting views, it lets the CIA basically dictate what everyone else is told. So moving on, the case for a second shooter. This is like the main argument. So the magic bullet, can I open the link? Do you want? Okay, cool. So magic bullet, I just want to show you. This is the supposed bullet that hit JFK.
Wait, I'm gonna watch his dad.
Is this like a new POV?
No, just a little
First, hit the president in the back and then exited his chest.
There's actual footage.
It then entered through the governor's back, went through his rib, and then exited through his chest. But it wasn't done yet. It then entered his wrist, shattering the wrist bone, and then exited the wrist, and went partially into the governor's leg.
So basically that causes 7 wounds from one bullet. How do I go back? Sorry. It is this one. Yeah, it's that one. Cool. Okay. So basically, so you guys saw that, right? 7 wounds with one bullet, and that thing is curving. The bullet on screen there, that is the supposed bullet that was found in Connolly's leg that fell out onto the stretcher. I don't know how many of you guys know guns, but after going through that much flesh and hitting multiple bones, the tip of that bullet should be either fragmented or smushed, or it should not be in perfect condition like that. Like, I know it's metal, but even metal is not that resilient. But it's unrealistic, and the image on the side even shows a little what the forensics papers showing, hey, here's how it could have possibly been. But even if you moved JFK and Connolly slightly to kind of position themselves a little more straight, then it just deviates a lot. Basically, that one bullet causing all 7 wounds is just so unlikely. It was mocked and called the magic bullet. But why would the CIA even believe this if it's so unlikely? They needed, tongues. They only could confirm 3 shots. The first shot was confirmed to have missed. The last shot was confirmed to have hit him in the head. So then they needed one bullet to account for all 7 wounds. And that's basically the only way they could even figure out how to get one bullet to cause all 7 wounds. So next up, to contradict what they said about 3 bullets, you have the testament of John Connolly. So John Connolly is the governor and was the dude that sat right in front of JFK, the guy that was hit through the back, through his wrist, hit his leg. So he publicly accepted the one-shooter theory, as you can see from the newspaper. He's just like, oh yeah, Oswald acted alone. But later testimony and later videos of him like talking about the incident say that he was almost confident that he was shot by a separate bullet. And Connolly actually has a background in hunting and gun shooting. You know, he's Texan. But no, he actually did have a background hunting, so I think that's a fairly credible source from him. Because one of the other things about him is, in his testimonies, he claimed that when JFK was shot, he had enough time to turn to his right, turn back to his left, and turn about 30 degrees this way, and then was hit by something. It wasn't hit immediately. The fact that he had time to turn around once says that there was a good amount of delay in between the 2 hits. His wife sitting next to him also, claimed the same thing, that he was able to turn around and then turn back. But even if he says that he was shot by different bullets, why did he publicly accept that there was only one shooter? This goes back to the original context where the CIA needed there only to be 1 shooter and 3 shots to keep the public happy and happy with the government. So there's potential CIA pressure where the CIA maybe pressured John Connolly into saying that, hey, there was only 1 shooter, I was hit by the same bullet, because they needed everyone in the incident, any prominent person in the incident, to have the same testimony to keep the story constant. And now another important testimony. Cool, that image went way up. Cool. Okay, so that's James Todd. So that's the testimony of James Todd. James Todd, probably none of you guys know who he is. James Todd, or James T? Todd. T? I think it's T. Sorry, James T. He was the guy that was hit by the first missed bullet. And he actually claimed that when he heard the first gunshot, he heard it from his left, which he would be on the bottom side of that top street. I think there's a marker showing his location, rough location. Yeah. But he would have heard it from his left side, which suggests a shooter potentially at the grassy knoll on the left, which is a common place where a lot of conspiracy theorists say, hey, there was a second shooter there. Oswald, which is the confirmed killer, he was on the right side of James Teague, so that kind of contradicts that. But so the bullet that missed him allegedly hit the ground and then bounced back up, hit his cheek, but the point in the concrete that the bullet originally hit had no copper residue, whereas the forensics analysis found that there was copper residue in JFK's shirt and the wounds. And what that basically means is that the bullets used are different bullets, because copper on a bullet is sometimes used in a casing called full metal jacket, basically allowing a bullet to be harder and withstand more penetration. Basically hit harder by having the same size thing by putting a case of copper around it. The fact that there wasn't copper found on the concrete on the floor that James Teague was hit with suggests maybe that there was a second bullet, because there was a difference in copper. And the other thing is that he actually, at the time of him being wounded, he was actually standing 250 feet away from JFK. Do you have a viewer? I'm going to steal this for a second. So assuming James Teague is somewhere in this area, and Oswald is up here, imagine JFK's around here. It doesn't make sense for this line of sight to hit James Teague over here. But if you imagine you had a second shooter over here, JFK is somewhere in this area, James Teague is somewhere over in this area. That makes a little more sense. It hits here, skips off the concrete, and has a more direct line of sight, versus this being almost perpendicular to it. I'm gonna put that down there. Cool. Okay, but then there's also the question of why maybe the CIA just completely ignored that, like they ignored some of the other evidence. But it is actually in the CIA's interest to find copper in the cement, because it helps their narrative that the sniper used the same bullets. Basically, if it's the same bullets, then it's probably from the same gun, because any marksman will tend to use the same bullets because they carry the same ballistic characteristics. So if you switch bullets halfway through, like a magazine, then imagine you switch bullets. First bullet goes low, second bullet goes low, and then you switch. Now you're going to be going high. Your aim is going to be off. There's no logical reason to switch bullets halfway through. So, it doesn't make sense to have the same different bullets in the same gun. Anyways, moving on. Which one was it? So, later, the FBI ran some tests on the rifle that James Teague was using. And unlike today where we have a lot of semi-auto or fully auto weapons, back then a lot of guns were actually bolt action, meaning that after every shot, you had to pull a bolt back and then pull back forward. The FBI actually ran tests and said that, hey, it's impossible for those 3 shots to be fired in the 6 seconds that James Teague had. Even a headline from 1967 claimed that there were actually 3 gunmen with 4 bullets, and that would be consistent with the FBI findings that each shooter shot less than 3 bullets, meaning that would be that would meet the 2 shots in 6 seconds versus 3 shots in 6 seconds. Moving on. So this is the grassy knoll. This is the juicy part. So this is actually the supposed location of a second shooter, and there's a couple films from this side of the street that you're currently seeing that shows the grassy knoll, but the famous one you'll find is the Zapruder film, and that shows it from the same side of the street as the shooter and in front of the shooter. So the shooter would be behind the camera. That's the one you're going to see the most. But there's a couple that go across the street, and basically this is important because, if it's true, then there really is a second shooter, and there's some testimonies. I believe it was a police officer in the back who noticed that there was a black car with 2 dudes there before the shooting, but afterwards one of the dudes was gone. And there's a supposed bogus secret service theory where that policeman went up to one of the dudes after, was like, hey, who are you? It's really weird that you're back here, because supposedly there was some gunshot back here. And the dude pulled out Secret Service credentials, showed him, said, look legit, so police officer let him go. But then he contacted Secret Service after to be like, hey, was there really a guy back here? And their records show that they had no guys posted back there. So that's a little weird. The other thing about this, so the Warren report was trying to gather evidence, but didn't use most of it because that would go against the narrative. And 121 witnesses were listed, and actually 51 of them, more than almost half, thought they were from the grassy knoll. Basically the same number thought that the shots originated from Oswald's location, as they just didn't know. I think it was about 38 said that they just didn't know they were there, they were too panicked to figure it out. So granted, that is a potential point of misinformation because people could remember the info wrong, or there could have been an echo. That is a completely reasonable explanation. One more thing. So there's the supposed umbrella man. So the day before the parade, it was raining really hard in Texas, Dallas, that whole area. And the morning of the parade, around 9 a.m., JFK was out there about 11. So about 9 a.m., the whole weather cleared up. It was all sunny. So if you look at videos, you'll see a lot of people light clothing, because they're like, oh, this is the first nice day in a couple days. Let's go out, let's enjoy it. And this dude's out there with an umbrella. No one else has any rain. There weren't really clouds in the sky. Nothing. But different camera angles will show you different things. But basically that dude with the umbrella, he raises it as soon as JFK's car goes by. As soon as he raises it, you see almost immediately the first shot comes. Am I allowed to show that? It's not the head exploding one. Okay, cool.
Yeah, when Jimmy got shot, his head exploded.
Yeah, cool.
Oh no.
YouTube age restricted. Can I sign in on my own account?
It says you signed in. That's his YouTube channel.
I'm subscribing to his YouTube channel.
Oh, cool. Let's shake it.
What's your password?
We love YouTube.
Sign into
Cool. I'm gonna quickly dox Docs?
I'm memorizing that right now.
I got this on camera.
I don't know his email though.
Oh, hold on. I can't spell. Cool.
It's his first name.
Oh man, look at that. Look at those. Look at that password. Ooh.
Oh wait, no, wait, hold on, I'm stupid.
Hi, stupid.
Oh my god.
Bruh.
Yeah, I want to see it again.
I saw it a lot.
Look at this boomer.
Guys, did one of you just draw me?
You're not even in this period.
Brandon is a deep day off.
Wait, is anyone going after Brandon?
Oh my god, Jesus Christ. Never mind, okay.
We're never gonna finish.
Never mind, okay, it's cool. Never mind.
There was a not now button. Okay, whatever.
Basically, I was gonna try and show you the point. Huh?
Go.
Okay, basically, anyways, I was trying to show you this point that, he gets shot, he starts clutching his neck right after he passes the sign where the dude raises his umbrella. But never mind, I guess YouTube wants to age restrict my own videos. Cool. Oh, anyways.
You filmed this?
Yeah, I was there. 1963, I was there, dude. So Secret Service involvement, or anything weird with the Secret Service. So the presidential limo was, if you look at it right now, very open. And if you look at the back, you'll see a severe lack of Secret Service, whereas if you look in the bottom right, it's not exactly the same model of car, but it's still same idea. We're supposed to have 2 guys on the sides, 2 guys in the back. Notice the severe lack of CIA guys in the back. Guess where Oswald was in relation to JFK? In the back. But yeah, so the bubble top of the car, the top roof of the car was removed. Supposedly JFK requested that. There were less Dallas police officers on motorcycles around them, supposedly at JFK's orders. And, the Secret Service was removed off the rear bumper, supposedly at JFK's orders. And guess what? They interviewed Secret Service afterwards, and none of them could ever testify that JFK told them to do it. So yeah, I could not dig up a name of who told them to do that. That was probably in the burned CIA documents. Again, so now we talk about individual members of the Secret Service. So Roy Kellerman, the guy in the front right seat, Secret Service is supposed to get up and shield the president. But if you look in the bottom right, the guy in the front right of the car, you cannot see his head because it's actually ducked down, and is hiding behind the windshield at the first shot. He did not try and get up. He did not try and protect the president. And there's also the Echo from Dealey Plaza, which was written by Abraham Bolden, first black Secret Service agent, and he overheard that other agents said that they wouldn't protect JFK from assassinations. And I just find that interesting because he was black, there was a racial divide between him and his other coworkers. Since he was the first one, he was probably the only one there. And maybe his coworkers didn't trust him enough because, oh hey, that guy's kind of darker than us. They didn't trust him enough to be like, hey, we're not going to protect JFK, you can, but we're not gonna. They probably didn't want to do that. And it was also the driver's actions. So after that first shot hit, the driver actually slowed down to about 7 miles an hour. And then you can see right after that third shot is already done, about full 6-7 seconds later, then he starts to speed up. Whereas I have a slow reaction time, but I'm sorry, 7 seconds reaction time?
I think he stopped to see what was going on because he was driving, and when it all happened, he slammed on the brakes and he's looking back. He's like what's going on? And then, that's when he's kind of like, oh, I better get out of here, and that's when he takes off.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay. That's fair.
He was paid.
That's another thing. And so the last little thing, so the autopsy, it was horrible. So it was conducted at the Naval Hospital, but there was literally an Armed Forces Institute of Pathology, like a specialized institute, 5 miles away, and the guys there were just like, no, we're gonna do it here because we need it to be fast. Because LBJ literally refused to leave Dallas without confirmation of his death. And that kind of leads to a rushed process. And the guys actually performing it weren't actually licensed in forensic pathology. And that's not normally a thing you want. Like, imagine an engineer without a degree building your house and that thing just falls down. It's like. But yeah, so they specifically chose guys with little experience. I would think that it's to hide evidence, because maybe, hey, you don't know as much, you don't check certain places. And so yeah. So the actual autopsy, the oopsie daisies. So the guy in charge of it actually took a lot of papers home of the autopsy and burned them at home, destroying documents. He claims they had JFK's blood and didn't want them to be like, ooh, collector's items. But then, yeah, there's the other thing, the brain missing. That's the famous one, and that could have been important about providing information about that headshot that hit him, because that would provide a lot of info about the direction of the bullet. What?
Actually, it was leaked that the autopsy when he took the photos of like how his brain was kind of exposed. They have it still, like it was leaked.
They have the brain still?
Go look it up.
They
Girl, you're
no,
so-
I've seen.
They don't have
no,
the
they have
brain.
the-
They
no,
don't
yeah,
have the brain,
I've
but
seen
they
the
have
picture.
photos.
I've seen the picture.
They have the
But they
photos.
don't have the actual
They don't
brain.
have the brain,
Yeah,
yeah.
they lost the brain.
Yeah, they lost the brain.
Yeah, they lost the brain itself. Yeah, the pictures though, they don't tell you that much though.
Yeah, but they said his brain was exposed.
Yeah, the brain was exposed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the
Yeah.
skull
But they
came
lost
off
it?
and it was like.
They lost it, yeah.
Yeah, it's gone. It
How do you lose
disappeared.
it if it's exposed?
It fell out.
Like it fell out.
They didn't
They
lose
went-
the brain.
and
They
they never found it?
They
yoinked
took his
it.
brain out, preserved it in a jar, and the jar is gone.
They did Albert Einstein.
Or they sent it.
All right, continue.
Okay.
Dropped a jar in the
So
river.
the other thing is, they didn't actually like take apart the body and look at where the bullets went through the body. They just kind of looked at the entrance hole, exit hole, and then just kind of guessed everything in between. And just the fact that they weren't that thorough with it for something that major, just shows that they were not going to be that thorough with anything else. Like there's also, I think it was the House Committee of Assassins, the second one, that noted that they lacked a lot of photos that were supposed to be taken during the autopsy. So quickly, last little bit of CIA involvement. The CIA just hated communists, and JFK, right before, he negotiated the Cuban Missile Crisis, and he pulled guys out of Vietnam, whereas Lyndon B. Johnson, right after him, just immediately threw guys back into Vietnam, probably to just kill the communists like the CIA wanted. Really quickly, there's a couple alternative theories, but I'm just going to talk about like the two big ones. So, basically, hey, the communists did it. That one was actually interesting to me, because that seems like, the first target. But Khrushchev actually was worried when he got the news of like, wait, no, they're gonna blame us, they're gonna nuke us. Wait, no, that actually wasn't us. And Khrushchev was actually seen crying at his funeral and actually said, no, sorry, it was Fidel Castro that said there can no longer be peace in our time, because he was actually open to the idea of negotiating with them. Basically, the KGB, they would not be that stupid though. Like if they're trying to create an assassination on an American president, they would not be contacting Oswald, who was a known communist sympathizer, because the CIA would already be monitoring him for any sort of like communist activities. Last one, the mafia did it, is basically stems from Jack Ruby's killing of Oswald, because Jack Ruby had supposedly had mafia ties because he paid off his debts. But if the CIA wanted JFK dead and the mafia did it, that would be a really convenient excuse, and there wouldn't be as much need for investigation or to destroy or falsify as many documents as they did. Just call it a mafia. Just say, hey, mafia did it. Call it a day and just leave. So basically, in conclusion, it's just CIA probably did it just because the government investigations failed to give proper answers. Just kind of left that down. That's a weird little thing that happened and just didn't do it. The whole process was butchered purposefully with the autopsy and the Warren Commission just completely ignoring evidence. And then there's the big inter-service rivalry between the CIA and the executive office, especially with the Bay of Pigs. And similar to Marie's government trust graph from yesterday, the government trust dwindled since the 60s and has just tanked until now. And probably started due to JFK's assassination, because the government hid so many documents and said so many contradicting things that people can't trust what the government sends out anymore. Alright, that's it.
Alright, good.
Cool.
Anyway, when Trump came to office,